It's my great privilege to introduce to you Dr. Khazeh Fananapazir this morning. He will be taking this session and the next session, and he will be talking to us on the two very, very important tablets revealed by Baha'u'llah. First one being the tablet of Ahmad, and the second one, tablet of the fire tablet. قد اخترق المخلصون. The tablet of Ahmad, we all have been saying through the years at the time of difficulties and problems, and we all know the great power this tablet has. And I'm sure Khazeh will help us to study it more and understand it even further.
Right after the talk on the advent of divine justice, I was looking at the book in my room across the meadows here, and I felt I would like to do some justice in the first few minutes of this talk on the tablet of Ahmad to it. And in fact, I felt immediately that the three talks, the advent of divine justice, the tablet of Ahmad, and the tablet of fire, are all part of the same feeling that I would like to convey to the distinguished audience here, who've given me this great privilege, and I really mean it. Dr. Monroe, Jamshidi, Paul, and others from the Irish school who've asked me to come. I found in the Advent of Divine Justice, and I'll say I'll be very brief on these very important sentences. I'll share this with you, and then they will illuminate the rest of my talk on the tablet of Ahmad. The beloved guardian says in the Advent of Divine Justice, we must acquire essential virtues. And he says these essential virtues are these: self-renunciation, moral rectitude, chastity, indiscriminating fellowship, holy discipline, and spiritual insight. If I'm too fast, I'll slow down, because I really feel if I can only convey these things, because these, he believes, are the essential virtues. Then he uses the word essential again. He says essential qualities which are necessary for success are audacity, consecration, tenacity, self-renunciation, and unstinted devotion. This is the one I was trying to remember yesterday by heart by saying act, audacity, consecration, tenacity, self-renunciation, and unstinted devotion. He goes on to say very briefly that, I'm saying briefly in my summary of it, that we must acquire these qualities patiently, prayerfully. Now you see why I'm saying it's the same as the tablet of Ahmad. These qualities, you see, the tablet of Ahmad, and I'd be very keen if somebody produces the English one for me very soon, because then I've got the tablet of fire with me. So, to acquire these qualities, he says, we must pray, prayerfully and patiently acquire them. These qualities, he says, are imponderable. They result in imponderable spiritual faculties. Imponderable. Imponderable. Very interesting word. You know, I'm not one of these people who like developing a word, thousands of things, but imponderable. You can't get to the bottom of it. It's very deep. You can never say, I have fully got it, and that's it, and that's it. You see, it's a process. Imponderable spiritual virtues. In Persian, Mr. Mavadat, alayhi Baha'u'llah, this wonderful person who translated Advent of Divine Justice, he says, Tawsif napazir. Tawsif napazir. Tawsif napazir. You cannot describe it. You cannot say, that's it. I have got the imponderable. No. Imponderable by definition is imponderable. I'm walking on the imponderable path. I see Trevor is smiling because this is something which is very dear to his heart. In our earlier conversation, he said the imponderable spiritual faculties. Now, these can be achieved by constant scrutiny, self-examination. Scrutiny and self-examination. So, I must do it for myself. You must do it for yourself. And these lovely children, I think, who said these prayers, I think they're already doing it for themselves. It's really wonderful. Now, just to go on to that subject, in this lovely book, The Advent of Divine Justice, he says here The purpose of the summer schools, the purpose of all schools, the purpose of my existence here. In fact, if I don't achieve part of this success, I would feel my non-being is better than my being. The purpose of this, he says, is through these schools to enrich through study and discussion, page 45 of this book, through study and discussion, his knowledge of the faith, so as to be able to transmit it with greater confidence and effectiveness, the message with which he's been entrusted. So really, the purpose is to get to £1,000, as well, one of the purposes. The purpose, I see the purpose is manifold. The purpose is to pioneer. The purpose is to fulfill the mission of the House of Justice, diffusion of the Spirit. But the purpose of all schools, all study classes, all weekend classes, the purpose is to enrich through study, and discussion, his knowledge of the faith, so as, these are his words, infallible words, to be able to transmit with greater effectiveness and confidence the message which has been entrusted. I always remind this of myself, so that he can't transmit the message with more words, because that's one of my problems, words. But to transmit it with greater effectiveness. And again, it's one of these things I hope will be deleted. But that lovely fellowship last night, the evening meal, the food, the Persian hospitality, the kindness of Nushin, the kindness of the rest of the people, was very effective in making me realize, and the company that I had downstairs. All of these things, the imponderables. So he says the purpose of the summer schools are these. Now, the Guardian knows when he says the word imponderable that everybody will suddenly, everything in this faith is the balance. Page 50, he says the answer to the imponderable. And what is it? Let him not consider, and he quotes Baha'u'llah's words, the largeness or smallness of the receptacle. That's it. So suddenly you really find the purpose is not to consider whether I am large or small. The purpose is not to consider the largeness or smallness of the receptacle that carries the measure of the grace that God has poured forth in this stage. Our intention is not to measure capacities or even to delve into the potentials of any situation, but to let it become the channel. So really, I felt that, is that it? Yes, and the other things, the other thing which is very exciting for me, and which I see all the time in the beginning of when this thing starts, the qualities in this book that the Guardian admires, these are the qualities which we need, the essential ones I mentioned. And if anybody wants, I will repeat them at the end. But the qualities which he admires, which makes him love the believers. You see, you want to know what is he likes. I want to imagine if I was in the presence of the beloved Guardian, which he is here with us in this meeting. The spirit of the beloved Guardian, the spirit of Abdul Baha, the spirit of Baha'u'llah, these are living spirits. Every time the Guardian mentioned Abdul Baha, he says, Ruhe, Zendeye, Javid Abdul Baha, the living, the present spirit of Abdul Baha. He's writing the letter, but he mentions the spirit is here. Ruh, the spirit. Zende, living. Javid, never dying, of Abdul Baha. So, but it's interesting, when you read their writings, you want to know what is the qualities that they admired. The qualities that he admired in this book, I've put the list of them, are fidelity, vigor. I like vigor. Sometimes you just go back and say, vigor. I've seen so many vigor. Eddie, I'm beginning to be familiar again with all the new friends whom I knew. The vigor. He loves vigor. Hazrat Ali Shoghi Effendi, he loved vigor. Zest. You see, it's interesting. He loved unquenchable enthusiasm. It comes all the time in this book. So you need. But he loved courage. He mentions zest, courage, unquenchable enthusiasm, fearlessness. He never says, wisdom is a principle. But he loves, he says, the fearlessness. Love is something you admire, It's efficiency. It's something the British and the Americans and the Irish and all the non-Persians, I'm a Persian. Trouble is efficiency. Keith is efficient. It's efficiency. He admired this in the Western believers. They're efficient. Tenacity. He mentions it always about these islands. Tenacity. So, this is one thing about the Advent evangelist. Sorry, Edwin has come back. This is the great joy that I have to be here. I'm realizing that these qualities we have to admire and to develop and assimilate in these summer schools and then temples. Now, one last word on the Advent evangelist, and then the whole thing starts again. In this book, The Guardian teaches, because this is associated with me now, I was supposed to give the talk. In this book, The Guardian, on page 40 of it, tells the believers, step by step, from the moment they enter a village, from the moment they enter a job, from the moment they enter school, from the moment they come to Enniskillen, from the moment they go to Belfast, from the moment they go to London, what they should do, to the moment that they leave, either die. And this is the page. He starts from the beginning. And the word has got, let him, let him, let him, let him, let him. Keith Monroe, I hope, will work with you on this. He says, you arrive in a situation, having arrived in his... Let him carefully consider every avenue of approach. Even if, for example, I'm supposed to live in that house forever, I have to think, the moment I arrive, in bed and such, and then let him consider the avenue of approach. Let him survey the possibilities. If that place is surrounded by Jews, I have to survey the possibilities about. If they're surrounded, if it's a theological seminary, and Khazeh is in that, survey the possibilities. And then, let him. The whole page is about let him do these steps until that final moment when he has caused somebody to declare the faith. Let him not be content. Every one of these is positive. Let him, positive. And then the last one is, I've underlined it, let him not, having, gone all the way there, let him not be content until he has infused into his spiritual child so deep a longing that he will arise independently to do what he's done. And then the paragraph stops. So on. You see, this is the beloved guardian. He's saying, you arrive, I'm just imagining, which is an imagination. I arrive, for example, in Limerick. I have to say, this is because he says, you arrive on the scene. We have, this is again a joke in medicine, you say, ABC, medicine, arrive on the scene. But usually we should say, A is for airways, You have to make sure that the mouth is open for breathing. B, C. B is for breathing. C is for circulation. You see, we have a nurse here, she knows A, B, C. A, arrive. But there's some of the joking doctors have changed this and they say, A means you arrive on the scene. B means you blame the others. And C, I won't mention it. So you arrive, but he says when he arrives on the scene, he surveys the possibilities, he evaluates the advantages, proceeds intelligently, and every word of these, because this is the time, and then the last one he says, let him not. Everyone is positive, and at the end, when you feel, alhamdulillah, declaration card is signed, let him not be content until the whole cycle starts. This is why this book. I feel a little bit happier now about the Advent, because, I've done, yesterday it was not completed. But it is related, because of that word, prayerfully, qualities are acquired. It is related to the tablet of Ahmad in these things. Now, I was very interested in the tablet of Ahmad, and when they were given this to me, not because I understand, not because really, it's such a deep thing. I thought of it in one point. The tablet of Ahmad is loved by everybody because in the beginning of it says, this is a very special power if read when in trouble or difficulty. So really, this seems the tablet of Ahmad is a bargain between you and Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah, in the beginning, this is of course written by the Trump, you need it for the time of difficulty. And all of us are in difficulty. Now, but the interesting thing is that I wondered with myself whether Baha'u'llah has put in the tablet of Ahmad a special condition, This is what is called divine justice. He wants you to do something, then he will help you in your difficulty. But what happens to the difficulty in the process? That becomes very interesting. So I feel that the tablet of Ahmad really is you going to Baha'u'llah and saying, look, I've got these intentions. I want you to do this, disease, death, unemployment, pregnancy, cancer, husband, wife, children, problems, difficulties, millions, nuclear war. You've got your own problems. Baha'u'llah says, okay, I've also got my side of it. Old age, everything, dementia. You've got difficulties. But Baha'u'llah says, Man kana fi shiddatin, he who is in difficulties comes with this tablet. But that's the last of the verses. In the beginning, Baha'u'llah has got his own plan. And I think this tablet of Ahmad is very interesting because once you've fulfilled his part of the bargain, the last bit, you either forget about it, either it dissolves, or either you see the new meaning of it. This is a bargain. Love me that I may love thee. If thou lovest me not, this child. It's a bargain. The tablet of Ahmad is the same. It's a deal. It's a covenant. It's a covenant between God and man. In the beginning of the Kitab al-Aqdas, Baha'u'llah says, he that breaks the covenant in the commandments. And that is, I think, the insight I would like to give. That the tablet of Ahmad, the sincerity at the end, absolute sincerity. It's really sincerity in seeing this bargain. You do your bit, he will do his bit about the difficulties, or what he thinks. No, that's sort of similar. Now, the other thing which is very interesting is that, it's a question of understanding. You read the tablets of Ahmad, you feel, I have said it. In English, in Arabic, in French, in German. And I don't know how many languages. The lady from the House of Justice, from the World Center, Annette, may know how many languages this is translated to. And they know a lot of these. But I don't know. I don't know how many languages this book, and how many people are reading it. But I know it's been read a lot recently. People are reciting it day and night. In this tablet is a question of understanding as well. Now, understanding in the Baha'i faith is different. This is another thing. Understanding is different. I had with me the Quran. It was in my other pocket. I left it in the room. The Quran is a book from God, revealed, and in the advent of divine justice, it says the most authenticated word of God. Now, the Quran is read. All the children read it, all the things. Now, Baha'u'llah appears 4 years before he revealed the tablet of Ahmad. He wrote another book called the Kitab-i-Iqam, the Book of Certitude, which we really should have a summer school on that. It's incredible. The book that the Guardian says is unsurpassed in preeminence. So in order to understand the tablet of Ahmad, I read the Iqam as well, the Kitab-i-Iqam, the Book of Certitude. In the Book of Iqam, Baha'u'llah says on page 104 of the Persian, 1,280 years have passed from the inception of the Quran. Jami' in Hamajira, all these people, har sabah, every morning, talawat, have read the Quran. Hanuz, up to now, biharfi, with one word of that book, have not appreciated. Can you see? Do you see, dear friends? What the meaning is incredible. The Baha'i faith, in other words, is saying that, just reading. What is this reading? Maqsood. I'm glad I'm mentioning this because this is not a Muslim country. But soon you'll have Muslims. But when you have a Muslim contact, don't mention this the first thing to tell them. Believe me, in my book, this is just a point of this. But it's interesting for us because don't tell them, thank you very much. I want to tell you that this is on the second page of our Iqan, this is written. 1,280 years. Now it's actually 1,400 years. Have passed from the Quran. And none of you people have read one word of the essential purpose. Now don't say that. You may say it about another book, but don't say that either. Because really it's a question of understanding. We must understand what is. understanding is given in the tablet of Ahmad. To understand is to understand the purpose. I had to find out what is meant by this understanding by obeying the tablet of Ahmad. The tablet of Ahmad says, here, the one whose name was Ali, he says, "O people, be obedient to the ordinances of God enjoined in the Bayan." So Khazeh Fananapazir got hold of the Bayan, this lovely book of the Bab, which is a mighty book. You can imagine, some of the books, the Kitab-e-Iran. I read, now, a question of reading. In the book of the Bayan, I found on page 20, the Bab says, "The fruit of all knowledge, samare ulum, ilm be awamir Allah hast." The essence of all knowledge is to know the knowledge of God on that day. You see how it links up. The essence of knowledge, samare, all the fruit of knowledge, is to know what is the knowledge, the love of God, the knowledge of God in that day. Naduna on, and then the Bab emphasizes nothing else. You see. So this is the Bayan. The Bab says the essence of knowledge is to know what God wants you to do on that day. He says in this Bayan, the next chapter, page 24 of that, I think, there is no fire. Sorry, there is each jannat. There is no paradise greater for mankind than to attain the presence of God and the presence of the verses, the revelation. Each nari, there is no fire worse than being remote. The concept of the nearness of God comes in the tablets of Ahmad. Being remote from the knowledge of God. So really, dear friends, what is happening is this. Here in the tablet of Ahmad, the first part of the covenant of God, he says, Ahmad, 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 Ahmad. Then he says, read the Bayan. He reads the Bayan. The essence of the Bayan, he says, you must obey the manifestation of God in His day. So the essence of knowledge, and then each nari, there is no fire, the concept of hell. There is no fire than being remote from that knowledge. And there is no paradise, the good side of it. Jannat, all the wonderful. There is no paradise than being near to the purpose of God. Now, the interesting thing becomes a little bit another dimension. The question is understanding the revelation. Now, the Bayan, of course, here says, if you read this 1,000 times in another chapter of it, Qasam bezawt aqdas ilahi, the Bab emphasizes, I swear by God, if one should read one verse of the next revelation, the Kitab al-Aqdas, which I have, one verse of this is equal to 1,000 perusals of this. Okay, we all know that because that's translated as well in Babas. Now, the question is understanding. This is all to do with, I had to read the Aqdas again. And in fact, I read it again last night. This is why some of the things. I wanted to find out what Baha'u'llah says in the Kitab al-Aqdas. To know the person who knows him. You have to know how someone knows Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah says, the one who knows me, how do you know him? How do you know the one who knows him? This is interesting. I have here a declaration card with me, because I always carry one of these. In case, hopeful, always one has hope. I believe in Baha'u'llah, the messenger of God for this age, and I hereby attest. Now this is one way you can recognize a Baha'i, is that if he signed this. This is one way that you recognize. If somebody signs this, you know that yes, Khazeh Fananapazir signed this some years ago. And you know yourself that you signed this, either in Persian or in Swahili or you signed this. Now, but interestingly enough, Baha'u'llah says in the Kitab al-Aqdas, Man arafani, the one who knows me, what is his capacity? How do you recognize him? Has he signed one of these? No, he is the one who has arisen. That's interesting. Man arafani yaqumu. So anybody who has recognized me, yaqumu. You see, we have an Arabic lady, a scholar here. We've got a few of them. What does yaqumu mean? He rises. So, man arafani, the one who recognizes me, yaqumu, is rising. Rising to do what? It's interesting. Yaqumu ala khidmati, to serve me. Interesting. Abdul Baha, his son, chose that name for him. He arises to serve him. So you recognize. See, you can recognize them by the declaration. It's interesting. Now, but the interesting thing, Baha'u'llah in the Kitab al-Aqdas, this most holy book, the Bayan, anticipating this, he says, Man arafani, yaqumu, he rises. Now, of course, I have, everybody rises at one point. That Baha'u'llah is very interesting. These words, it's just so sweet. He says, even the stones produce nice, sweet water as a result of his revelation. So sweet. Baha'u'llah says, Man arafani, the one who knows me, yaqum, rises to serve him. But what type of rising? Biqiyamin la tuq'iduhu. He rises to serve me, but that type of rising that nobody else can put him down again. Junudu samawati. Did I see anybody like that recently? Yes, yesterday I saw a film of one of those. Mona. She rose, she was teaching some students, but there was a potential for her to sit down. Because she was rising, she was teaching. Yes, Allah, the oneness of mankind, universal peace, progressive revelation, she was teaching. Then there was a situation in which she might sit down. In other words, God forbid stuff. This is a question of tests, very important. You have to think. But she rose, and the little video, this wonderful video, which has been praised very much, I thought of it. It was very moving. And you see, there's one point in which she has to given a chance, to sit. Baha'u'llah says in the Kitab al-Aqdas, he rises, or she rises in this case, because this is both sexes. She recognized Baha'u'llah, and when the time came, yaqum, she rose. But there was always a potential that she might go back. La tuq'iduhu. Baha'u'llah defines rising, she rose, but with a type of rising that nothing is going to pick them sit down. This is the faith. This is the tablet of Allah. Can anyone say he's fulfilled the first part of the bargain? whenever one tends to look at this, you see the difficulties and the tribulations. It all becomes... See, this is what I would like to leave with you. The tablet of Ahmad is really a teaching document. The tablet of Ahmad is a document of declaration of faith. The tablet of Ahmad is telling Ahmad from Yazd, Ya Ahmad, O Ahmad, tell, qul. It's interesting, this concept of say, because the word say, qul, say, always occurs in the Ahmad. Some people have asked me, what is this say? Well, basically, if you want to get into the academics, it's essentially that God in the Quran every now and then says to Moses, O Moses, qul, say. O Muhammad, say to the Arabs, qul. Baha'u'llah has taken, of course, Baha'u'llah is supreme manifestation of God, the unseen revealed. We'll come to his station a bit later. But he reveals, now Baha'u'llah does what God in the Quran says to Moses. Moses says, qul, Baha'u'llah is saying to Ahmad, qul. And anyone who reads it becomes qul, becomes part of the sayers. So really we are invited by the tablet of Ahmad, summoned to join the steps of these previous prophets and messengers who were going to announce, in the book of Amos, in the book of Isaiah, in the book of Ezekiel, Amos, go and tell unto the king of Judea. Go and tell. In Arabic it is qul, say. Baha'u'llah says in the tablet of Ahmad, O Ahmad, you go and say. What are you going to say? You're going to say these essential tenets, the essential verities of the Baha'i faith. The essential verities. And what are the essential verities? That in 1844, the Bab appeared by the name of Ali. He appeared. Verily, he that appeared is the king of messengers. Then he appeared. And then he talked, announced in his book, the Bayan, which here I have had the good fortune. I never before went to a summer school with the Bayan, but because I was told to speak about the Ahmad, I felt all the way, coming with the boat, Strand Ra, bearing the Bayan. But it's just to fulfill. The director of studies is here. He says, have you ever read the Bayan? He says, yes. Because now I feel... And in the Bayan, I come to the essence of it, the essential. Which the Bab says, Very clearly, in the prison of Mahkum, 1848, he revealed this. He says in the essence of all knowledge is to know the manifestation of God. Him whom God will make manifest. The essence, okay. We sign the declaration, we know. And then Baha'u'llah defines for us, Man arafani, he who knows me will rise. So if you find, God forbid, stop. If you find the Baha'i who he says, I have recognized him, but I'm sitting. Well, it's very difficult. His definition becomes a little bit, because we have to be, it's being recorded, I can't be very joking. But I think, but you rise, and you're known by your rising. Now, in the beginning, let's just actually a little bit adhere to the text, this blessed and holy text. It says here at the very beginning of this, proclaiming to the sincere ones the glad tidings of the nearness of God, and calling the believers in the divine unity. Now, very interesting. This very simple notion, divine unity. I read the Iran. I read some of the Baha'i writings to find the meaning of divine unity. Baha'u'llah in the Kitab al-Iqan says the essence of divine unity is to recognize again the unity of the manifestations. So you see, really, again, it's a teaching document. Every Baha'i who's trying to explain to his friend, to his loved one, to his contact, that look, the love of God which revealed itself from time immemorial, as the gleaning says, through Adam, through Noah, through Jesus, through Muhammad, through all the previous manifestations. This love of God is given, the glory of God is given. And Baha'u'llah says in the Kitab al-Iqan, which I have here as well, there is no other unity of God other than realizing the unity of the manifestations. Fascinating. This is the subject of a number of summer schools we can dwell on. The unity of God is to know that the Christians of Ireland are the Baha'is. Please delete that. That is a very important point. To know Christ is to know the manifestation of whose coming is return. Believers in the divine union. And to know means to rise. Peter knew the manifestation of God in his day. Abdul Baha says in the Will and Testament, follow in the steps of Peter. Let them that are men of action follow in the disciples of Jesus. Because they knew. Today, if Peter was here, Baha'u'llah tells us what he says. He wrote in the tablet to the Pope, he says, this is the day that the rock, that is Peter, crieth out, come. So Peter, James, apostles of Muhammad, apostles of Christ, they are all here. You are walking in their steps. When you read the tablet of Ahmad, they are saying it with you. It must be with that sincerity, that conviction, that we really are living in the fulfillment of time. It says here, 45 of this. The purpose underlying all creation is the revelation of this most sublime, this most holy day, the day known as the day of God. I read the rest of the sentence and I show you the interesting thing. The purpose underlying all creation is amazing. It's really astounding. And this is why the Guardian says, it staggers the imagination. It makes you want to rise. Nobody will make you sit. I mean, when you realize this, that's the sort of realization. La tuqidu. You will not sit when you realize this. When you realize it, assimilate it. The purpose underlying all creation, the creation of New Zealand, birthplace of Anna, the creation of Iran, the creation of all the books. The purpose underlying, 1938, before the Guardian wrote, is to know this day, the day of God. The highest essence and the most perfect expression of whatsoever that peoples of the old have either said or written has through this most potent revelation been sent down from the heaven of the will of the all-possessing, the all-abiding. So really, what I'm saying, friends, is that this is the recognition you realize the unity of God, when you realize the unity of purpose. That's why a Christian becomes a Baha'i, a Jew becomes a Baha'i, a Muslim becomes a Baha'i. That's why we want to diffuse the divine spirits. That's why we want to become a better transmitters. The whole idea of these messages to become a better transmitters. You've had some transmission, we want to transmit to the future generations the sense of unity, the unity of purpose, the unity of God. So this is really one word, divine unity. Because it's very easy. I ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, I believe in one God. Thank you very much. Baha'u'llah was surrounded by these people. Every time Baha'u'llah, in Akka, he was in prison. 2 years. He couldn't, 9 years. He said, I didn't see a blade of grass. 9 years. I always knew this, of course, but I read a prayer recently in Persian. Baha'u'llah says, I beseech thee by those trees that have been planted since I entered this prison. Bel ashjar allati ghurisat. Ashjar. He says, I beseech thee by those trees that have been planted since I, he didn't see a tree on those 9 years since he entered the most great prison. Of course, you can see it in different meanings, but trees being planted. But essentially, he didn't see one. He says, I have entered this prison, but Jamal al-Khidam has not entered the bath. 3 months. This is in the Surah Mubin, Kitab Mubin. 3 months. Such suffering. To recognize the manifestation. You want to read the tablet back, remove your difficulties. You want to get an exam, he will do it. But what about your part of the bargain? Sidq mubin, absolute sincerity. Means you realize the author. He says, Jamal al-Qidam, Salasatu Ashur, 3 months. Now dakhal al-hammam, has not entered the bath. Just imagine. God, it's amazing when you think, in the United States, when I was there, they talk about 3 times a shower, which is very reasonable, the heat of some of those. But 3 months. You recognize him, you rise to serve. Now, the emotion, of course, means that you must also be in touch with the content. You recognize him, and you rise. The court of the presence of the generous one, informing the severed one of the message which has been revealed by God, the King, the glorious, the peerless, guiding the lovers to the seat of sanctity. When I was mentioning about Baha'u'llah in Akka, I said in the beginning that it was very easy to say, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but one God. Okay? And I said Baha'u'llah was in that prison, not entering the bath, suffering, and around him everybody was saying, La ilaha illallah, there is no God. And even now, if you go, not in Akka because it's part of the Jewish Palestine, but if you go a little bit further on, Damascus, La ilaha illallah, there's no God. Baha'u'llah says, Ilahi bejuz hawa nadarand. They have no God, but their desires. So the unity of God is not to say, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but one. I believe in God the Father, the Creator, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. I was brought up in this. I knew it. I believe, Holy of Holies, I believe in the Son. It's very easy to say it. La ilaha illallah. Belief is not to say it. Because Baha'u'llah says in the Iran, Ilahi, they have no God, but their desires. Because to have a God is to overcome the desires, to succumb the delusions, and then gradually recognize him. When you recognize him, you rise to serve him. And when you rise to serve him, he will deal with your difficulties, whatever they are. You see? So this is what I meant. Unity of God. The Guardian became a Guardian in 1921, as you know, but he was, of course, a very special person. The 28th of November, when Abdul-Baha passed, he started 6 years of really building. In the first 6 years, everything he wrote was about qualities, changing, transformation. And I remember one sentence, which is very interesting for me. I'll share it with you, about belief in the unity of God. Because he says, believers in divine unity. Believers in divine unity. Am I one of those believers in divine unity? You have to say this. The Guardian says, there is us in this dispensation. Iman, belief, is not iqrar bi-wahdaniyat, is not to say I believe in one God. Interesting. The Guardian is an interpreter. He's an interpreter. Iman is not iqrar, is not There's that my lovely declaration, which I hope will be filled in both in its literal deeper meaning and outer inner meaning. This is the quote, in its full meaning, in the type of Mona type of signature. You write this, you see. The Guardian says, Iman, belief, is not ighra, but qiyam, the same word that Baha'u'llah uses in the Aqdas. Interesting. His pen. He says, Iman is qiyam, is to rise. Bejami ishun iman, with all the conditions of Iman. Huh? You become aware, well, there's a lot to do. It's very interesting. It becomes a deepening, it becomes an insight. The Guardian, 1922 and 1923, I've got the title. Iman, belief, is not ighra, is not a statement, proposition. Trevor knows, they call it propositional belief in the universities. Proposition, institutional religion, propositional belief. I state the following. And they argue about these creeds, as you know in Christianity. 1,000 years they argued about the statements. Does the Holy Spirit come from the Father or from the Son? Or does he come from the Father, filioque, and the Son? No. Orthodox Christian Catholicism, 1 million casualties on a statement. Then the beloved Guardian says, Iman, belief in this faith, is not iqrar, is not this type of statements, but is qiyam. It's that word that Baha'u'llah uses in the Aqdas, to rise, bijami'i shu'un iman, with all the conditions of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, the tablet of Ahmad, really, in my suggestion, my humble suggestion, should really be studied partly through these type of approaches. I mean, everybody will come, and this is a very deep, you see, tablet of Ahmad is a statement. Ahmad was from Yazd. Ahmad was a believer in the Bab. Ahmad lived a long time. Ahmad has got a chapter by Adib Tahir Zadeh, a wonderful counselor. In his book, Revelation of Bahá'í, there's a chapter, you can read it. You know, all the song was from Yazd. But essentially, Baha'u'llah is using Ahmad. I'm telling you, in the year 1282, those who want to know the details, of Hijrah, which is about 1280 AD is 1863, so 1282 is 2 plus 63. 1865. So it was revealed in 1865 when Baha'u'llah was in Adrianople, and at that time, of course, he had not revealed the Aqdas. It was the period, what is called, between these two ordinances. He's telling Ahmad, go and teach, go and teach, go and teach, and then tell them, and then tell them, and then tell them, and then the tablet of Ahmad becomes a teaching document. So we must use it to realize the message, the station of Baha'u'llah. I read recently in a tablet, which again I have here with me, either here or in the room. They asked Abdul Baha many questions. And Abdul Baha said this word, this wonderful tablet, which is, he said to them, Ta 200 sal digar, until 200 years to come. This was written in 1912. Jami'i, all your intentions. Che arshi, che farshi. Even heavenly things, even earthly things. Arsh means heavenly things. Farsh means must all be concentrated on teaching. This lady was in, I don't know the details, but essentially proposals. Abdul Baha wants her to concentrate. Until 200 years. Jami'i afkar, all your intentions. Che arshi, che farshi. You know, mystical things, non-mystical things, heavenly things, esoteric things, non-esoteric things, high things, low things, philosophic, everything has concentrated that tabligh. So, if you ask me as a director of studies as Hushan Jamshidi or Paul or Keith, come and talk on the tablet of Ahmad, do you think I can not obey this? I have to obey this. I have to try to see the tablet of Ahmad as helpful to the 7-year plan, to the 6-year plan, to the 10-year plan, to all the plans that will come, as part of the teaching document, to reconsecrate us. Now, another verse of this. Be thou as a flame of fire to my enemies, and a river of life eternal to my loved ones, and not of those who doubt. Before that, Baha'u'llah says, I think this, I must mention this one, and then I wait for your questions. Very interesting point here is this. O people, if you deny these verses, by what proof have you believed in God? Now, verses is ayat, revelation, signs, the power and the potency. You see, for those of you who are a little interested in history, and of course everyone should be interested in the history of the faith, there was a time when the Bayan had been written, the Bab had revealed it. And some people in some districts, had not heard that Baha'u'llah has taken the full assumption of authority, the Heavenly Father, Him whom God will make manifest. Oh, they hadn't really realized this. But they knew that the Bab had written in the Bayan, every 19 days, they should read a chapter of the Bayan. And what does that chapter say? The chapter says that if anyone should reveal ayat, verses, they should give up everything and investigate and accept it. Because it is impossible, the Bible says, that anyone can bring those verses except Him whom God will make manifest. So you see, I want you to, because this is called a higher learning, and I like to, if I find something, I'll share it with you. But I try to find, it says in the Bayan, every 19 days, consider a chapter of the Bayan, that chapter. When you read the chapter, it says, be careful that no one has appeared who has revealed verses. If he has, the Baha'is, the disciples of the Bab, who hadn't yet, should investigate. Because it says it's impossible that person. So the Baha'u'llah, forgive me, says here to Ahmad, go and tell them, Ali has come, the Bayan has been revealed. O people, if you deny these verses, by what proof? So in other words, automatically, the Baha'i should become Baha'i. And they did. 96%. Historians say 96%. And anyone who didn't was not really, aware of the mission of the Baha'i. We don't want to mention bad things about them, but basically, that's to recognize the Baha'i was to recognize it. Whoso desireth, let him turn aside. Then he says, a river of life at a flame of fire. It's very interesting. This desire for fire, I remember there are so many tablets that they've asked Abdullah and they've asked Baha'u'llah, this fire, get this sort of aggression. Baha'u'llah has written so many things. Fire is the fire of love. Fire is the fire of love. Fire is the fire of consecration. Fire is the fire of enthusiasm. See the destructive fire, which is of course the first thing you think, can you burn them up? No, the enemies need also love. The fire of love. It's Nawr mahabbati ilahi. Nawr hub. The fire of love. Every time the word fire is used, the fire of love, the fire of love. So they asked specifically, and I want to share this because this is a summer school, they asked specifically about the fire to the enemies, and it is in our interpreted writings that the fire that is to be given to the enemies is the fire that is being given to the enemies of the faith now in Iran, the fire of love. Positive. So really it's interesting. Because this has got something to do also with the next talk on, where are thy swords? So the swords, and if thou art overtaken, rely upon God. The people are wandering in the paths of delusion. A very important path. How can you say this with absolute sincerity without really getting to grips with it? Delusion. The paths of delusion. Subul al-Wahm. People. See? So when I say I'm a Baha'i, am I out of that delusion? You have suddenly to. The house of the garden of the faith described some of these delusions. The triple gods. The triple gods in promised days come towards the end. 3 gods in the desecrated temple of humanity. The delusions that they're worshipping are the isms. And he mentions communism, racialism, nationalism, materialism, isms, delusions. We're going to save this country through one ism. Baha'u'llah wrote, 1865. Mankind is walking in the paths of delusions. The Guardian says, these isms are like gods in the temple of humanity. It's very interesting. Yesterday, I think it was, last night, they were showing the message, and I was sitting beside the village Jewish lady. And I was seeing these temples in Mecca. They're destroying these, it's a lovely film. It shows, anyway, these big statues in Mecca, Quraysh. They're worshipping these idols, and
Muhammad comes along and Ali goes on the story. It's very interesting. Ali, successor, goes on his shoulder, says, Ali, let me get to the top one, gets the big one, hobla, gets the other. I know all the names of the idols as well. I guess it's stupid knowledge. But anyway, they are symbols. He comes and brings these Lat and Uzza, these lovely big idols, throws them down. Very interesting. Now, in the Islam, the Imams, Ali, Hassan, Hussein, Ja'far, Sadiq, these 11 Imams, Musa, Kazem, Ali, Reza, Taghi, Naghi, Hassan Askari, the 11th one who died in the year 260. These Imams wrote something and explained something. And their explanations are very, very important for teaching in the Muslim countries, and later for deepening the Baha'is. And what did they say? They said that when the Qa'im comes, when the promised one comes, he will have to destroy idols too. But the Imams were very nice. They were warned. They said, when the Prophet came, our grandfather, ancestor, because Muhammad was their ancestor, through Fatima, daughter. Fatima's son is called Hussein. And then I'll teach you in Islam later on. But anyway, when he came and broke some idols, 360 of them. But they said, but when the Qa'im comes, he has to break bigger idols, bigger delusions. Because those idols were made of stone and wood. It's very easy to break a stone and wood. The idols, he says, that Baha'u'llah and the Bab, the Qa'im, the 12th one, the Mahdi, they have to break bigger idols. Because they're not made of stone and khashab. What does it mean now? Wood. And hajar, stone. This is made of a different material. And Shawri Effendi, this beloved, infallible guy, the author of the Advent of that, in his other book, The Promised Day Has Come, he says, these are the isms. Some of them are the isms. The cynicism, the materialism, and so on. Now, Baha'u'llah says, in Arabic, because they don't have ism, he mentions it, Subul al-Wahm. وَلَيْسَ لَهُمْ بَصَرٌ. They have no eyes to see. No eyes. Anybody who sees this will be reminded of the manifestation of the Son, Jesus Christ. They have eyes and they see not. They have eyes and they see not. 11 times in the Gospel. I have eyes and they see not. They have eyes and they see not. So the tablet of Ahmad is telling Ahmad to go and provide eyes. So that means he's teaching. He's supposed to teach them. Well, then in that case, we have to fulfill this part of the bargain, then our difficulties will be resolved. Isn't it true? In one of the messages, the Guardian says, drown your problems in a sea of declarations. Isn't that right? John Long knows. The National Assembly members who've worked for 30 years, 40 years, they all are part of this. They know this. This has been their life and work. John Long. We were in Africa, we used to write to him, my late father. Drown your difficulties. Drown your difficulties in a sea of declarations. Teaching, changing, giving, rising. But rising so that you're not going to... Because if anybody rises and sits down, again, he has not fulfilled that law of the apples. Man arafani, who knows me, Yaqub will rise. You recognize. If anybody rises here at the end of this. But when he rises, la tuq'idhum, nothing will make him sit down. Not even his own self, which is the biggest problem. The self. I mentioned this too. Self. I'm giving you just glimpses of feelings. This is the word of Baha'u'llah. If 1,280 years nobody could understand the word of the Quran, how can I understand the word of the author? The sea from which all seas have generated. The ocean from which all oceans. The essence of all rivers. So we have to work on it. We have to explore it. And then, this wonderful thing at the end here says, know thou for certainty, he that has rejected this beauty has rejected all the beauties of the he that has some trouble with me is I'm so full of the Arabic one that that's right. Be thou assured in thyself that he who turns away from this beauty has turned away from all the messengers of the past, showed pride towards God from all eternity. So, dear friends, belief in God implies belief in Baha'u'llah. Center of the couple, guardianship, universal house of justice, institution, the rising. Belief in God is total, integral, When they got the uncle of the Bab, his name was Sayyid Ali Khawal, a wonderful man.
He was a tajir, a merchant of Shiraz, a distinguished Sayyid. His grandfather, goes directly to Imam Hussein. Special, very nice person. One of the, really when you look at the people of Iran, if later they do sociological studies, wonderful. Sayyid Ali Khan. The Bab was a young person. He brought him up. He helped. The Bab was staying in his home. He worked all the way from Shiraz to Mahkou. Saw the Bab. Came back on his way. And the Bab gave him some instructions about his wife and his mother. He arrived in Tehran. He's seen. Can you imagine this vision? Uncle who brings up a child. Imagine yourself in relation to your nephew and so on. You recognize. He arrives in Tehran, 1850, 3 months before the martyrdom of the Bab. They arrest the first one, Sayyid Ali Khan. They take him before the Prime Minister. The history of the martyrs is helpful. Because it says that through living sacrifice today, all of us should go through it. He says, they bring him from before the Amir the Prime Minister, Chancellor of the country. There's a discussion and so on. Now, there is one passage in Nabil's narrative, the Beloved Guardian again translated Nabil. How much has the Beloved Guardian done, dear friends? Just amazing, 60 years. How much? In that Nabil's narrative, which he translated, the Guardian says, the uncle of the Bab, what did he say? My refusal to believe in my nephew is tantamount, equal to the rejection of my great ancestor Muhammad, upon him be peace, Jesus, Abraham. He said, look, I'm going to cut your head off. He said, this is my belief. The uncle, 7 martyrs of Tehran, God passes by. They said they're like 7 sheep, 7 goats that went before the promised land. It's in all the prophecies of the Muslim. He said it. That if I reject my nephew, the Bab, I have to reject Muhammad. He said, look, you're going to kill him. First martyr. Second one was Mirza Qurban Ali, another. Second, there's Mirza Hussein and so on, they go on the names. So Baha'u'llah is mentioning this. It's easy for us, of course, to say it, to read it. But really, look at the conviction. You have to say it before the Prime Minister and give up your head. And imagine this degree of belief. You have to have for you can see beyond the veils. He's not a nephew anymore. He's the eternity manifest. The Bab. The King of Messengers. Now, the interesting thing is this. One of the things, I'll go back into the King of Messengers. And then we bestowed upon I'd like to answer some of your questions, because this is a very deep subject. King of Messengers. King of Messengers. Dear friends, just to go before the King of Messengers, I'll share this one thing. In the Islam traditions, there are some wonderful things. One of them is this. All that has been revealed, they say, Muhammad's Imam Bahá'í said, all that has been revealed in the Quran, in the Bible, notice, Varada fil Quran, it's been revealed in the Quran. All that has been revealed in the Quran, Varada fil Bismillah, Bismillah. All that has been revealed in Bismillah, he goes on to say, is Varada fil Ba, is revealed in Ba. So they asked him, what is in this Ba? All that has been revealed in Ba is been revealed in the Noqteh, in the point. You see, now in English, they don't have a point when you write B. Unfortunately, the blackboard is gone. When you write B in Persian, name, the beginning of the name of Baha'u'llah in the Bab, it's got a B. This is equal to letter. Every Persian knows, every Arab knows this, and I think every Baha'i should know this, because it occurs in the greatest name. B. Point. 1,200 years before the declaration of Bab, this Imam, this infallible guide of the Muslim dispensation, is said to them, all that is revealed in the Quran and the Bible, everything is revealed in the Be, and all that is revealed in the Be is revealed in the Noqteh, in the point, and the point sacrifices itself for the Be, and the point are one, and the Be is Baha'u'llah. Fantastic. This is in the books. I found a copy of it even in Edinburgh. Really, if there is an ounce of sincerity, an ounce of investigative desire,
Christ says, knock and it shall be opened. Ask your father for fish and he won't give you serpents. Just get on. If anybody looks at this, it will lead him to the truth. Why would they say that? Who is this point? Who is the bear? So the king of Mess, there are one. Every time Baha'u'llah wrote from Adrianople, not at the time he wrote it out, he says, mine own previous revelation. Mine own previous revelation. Mine own. This means, Zuhur Qabla, Zuhur Qabla, Zuhur Qabla. My previous revelation is the Bab. And he quotes the Bayan and he says, my previous revelation. And then he says, in Mazlum, this wronged one has never studied the Bayan. Interesting. Divine knowledge. And he says sometimes in the third of our head, in the third, it's written. He says, I have never studied it. Mysteries, tremendous mysteries. Wonder. Two revelations are one. He wrote the Iran. I'll stop here soon and answer your question because I want to give you all the things that I know because I really feel. He says in the Iran here, the point came and the letter came. Beh. He says, and this letter is ready to give his life in the path of the point. Every Nabi's narrative that is published, even the one, that lovely one that the British NSA, the British Publishing Trust published. In the first page you open, it says Nabi's narrative, Dawn Breakers, yes? And what does it say underneath it? That this revealed and manifest letter in Harfe Zawahir Mashud, this letter which is revealed, Baha, should give his life in the path of Nuqteh, in the path of Nuqteh, the point. He says, I'm staying in Baghdad so that this can be fulfilled. And another passage, of course, he says, and this is happening every day anyway, I'm giving my life in this path. So the king of Nas, they are one. But there are some other aspects. The messengers that came before the day of the Father. These are levels of understanding. They are one. And all of these, he says here, are a mercy, a bounty, a mercy from our part. There's no measure. One of the Christians was discussing this with me. He says, look, we've got everything. I said, interesting. Have you read the book of St. John? He said, yes. Because Baha'u'llah mentioned St. John should be read. Yuhanna. And Abdullah says, he says, read the Gospels. And the Guardian read to the Persians, read the Gospels, read the Quran, become deeper and better teachers. When you read the Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, verse 32, it says, and the Holy Spirit will be given, will be revealed. Og metro, in Greek, metro, without measure. Without measure. The revelation of God is without measure. I told this lovely Christian friend of mine, look, you mean it's all been given and that's it? Finish! Kaput! Because he says in the Gospel of St. John, without measure. Bedune mizan. The spiritual revelation is without measure. Advent of Divine Justice. Don't look at the receptacle. Just get on, rise, and go. I must stop because, thank you very much, and I'll answer your questions. So this is some features of the Tablet of Life. There are many others. Yes?
Okay, we open the floor for you now. Could you please? Yes? No?
I want to ask about the verse where it says, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ قَدَّرَ لِقَارِئِ أَجْرَ مَائَةِ شَهِيدٍ. God had ordained for the one who chants it the reward of 100 martyrs. I wondered if you could comment a bit on this because it's very mysterious.
First of all, I must congratulate you because you've chosen the favorite question. The favorite question that was asked in the time of the guardianship, in the time of Abdullah. They've always been keen on this because it's a question of human desires as well. And there are many answers, and it really is worthy of a deeper discussion. But essentially, in the interpreted writing, in other words, the way that Abdul-Baha and the way of the Baha'i writings have explained this, is that there are two types of concept. There is a concept of what is called, Arabic,
See, this is why when you say concepts, you have to sort of have time. One is called kayfiyat, that means the condition. One is called kamiyat, which means quantitative. You see, in English they call it qualitative and quantitative. The explanation that was given to these people who asked about 100 martyrs is that this is not a concept of quantity, kamiyat. This is a concept of quality. In fact, I must at this moment say that I'm very happy if anybody else wants to come and answer on this subject. But essentially the teaching that I got is that this is a qualitative thing, not a quantitative. Now, when you look at this thing about ajr, about reward, it says this concept of giving a reward has also occurred in the Quran many times. It says in the Quran, and when the people shall be patient under the sufferings, yuwaff as-sabirun, you know the Arabic, the patient ones, ajrahum, will receive the reward, bighayri hisab. What does that mean? Without any quantity. Without any, it's measureless. You see? Now Baha'u'llah, I didn't want to mention this, but every word, every sentence that is in the Arabic reminds you, if you really go and memorize it, reminds you of many, many verses in the Quran and the writings of the Bab and the writings in the Bible. The words are evocative. So if you read the Arabic, and the reward shall be given 100 martyrs, you're suddenly reminded in exactly the same Arabic language, yuwaff as-sabir ajra bighayr, without any. So he's really saying that we are talking about this bounty. Now, it says the patient ones will be given without any mercy, without any measure. This one, it says 100 martyrs. Shaheed, there's another thing, the concept of shaheed. Is it the martyrs? No, it's a very interesting, it's a very deep thing. Baha'u'llah says every drop of the blood of the martyrs will create khalqan. Nobody will know the number of people who will be created from every drop of the blood of the martyrs. Drop of their blood. The word martyr in English, the word shaheed also in Arabic, they are very related to the other word, which is witnessing. The words are all the same root, martyr and witness. Jesus said, I'm sending you to become witnesses. When you read the Greek, he says, I'm sending you to become martyrs. To witness to this Baha'i revelation is to be a martyr to it, as I mentioned earlier. The concept of bearing witness, the concept of saying it, the concept of announcing it is like being 100 witnesses. Now, you also know another dimension. God passes by. It is written that in the revelation of the Bab, there was a question about mir'at, the mirrors, the Son of Truth, and shaheeds. The Guardian says these were called witnesses. You see? Witness, shaheed, witness. The same word that is used 100 of. And it was felt to be an honor, if you will, be under the shadow of a mirror. In fact, it didn't last long. None of the mirrors really lived. They were all martyred in the fort of Tabarsi. Yeah? But Baha'u'llah is saying, look, 100 of these shaheeds, everything in the previous revelation is given to the reader of this writing. Because the Bab had mentioned, your greatest honor is to be a shaheed, a martyr in the path of this revelation. But it says all the martyrs from all time will not bear comparison to being a witness, shaheed, a martyr, to the revelation of him whom God will make manifest. So Baha'u'llah is telling this gentleman, Ahmad, go and tell the people that the promised one has come, and that all your previous concepts, mir'at, mirrors, shaheed, martyrs, all of these, there are many, many dimensions of this. But essentially the concept is not of quantity. I read it, absolute sincerity, and a martyr. Because the moment that thought goes through your mind, you've begun to measure it. Quantitative. It's not a question of quantity. They asked Abdul Baha this question many times as well, about his servitude. Because they had read in the Muslim writings that a servant who becomes an absolute servant and becomes a better and better and better servant becomes the manifestation of God. This is in the Muslim writings. Very beautiful. And Muhammad is al-ubudiyatu, the servitude. To be a servant, jawharatun, is a mystery, that the essence of it is that you become Rabb, the Lord. Abdul Baha said, my servitude is sanctified from that as well. He says, my servitude is sanctified from that notion as well. It's very, very beautiful, very subtle. Every concept of numbers, measures, ranks, stations, martyrs, mirrors. You see, they were beginning to think of it suddenly, as soon as the Bab had martyred. This is the human problem. Luckily in the Baha'i faith, this is sacredly intact. And as soon as the Bab had died, where's Mirat? There is a mirror. Where is the mirror? The mirror is here. Don't report something. The mirror, yes, the mirror. We want to follow his leadership position. Baha'u'llah came, wrote the tablet, 100 shaheeds, this type of martyrs, who haven't recognized me. Is nothing. You have to also see it in its context. Because he says at the end of it, tell the people in the Madinatullah in Baghdad to wait for the coming of the day of resurrection, which is his day. Because it was he was announcing his mission. This is in the beginning of Adrianople. Adrianople. Right? Adrianople, what happened in Adrianople? He broke away from Soka Azar, those who wanted to. And this break was called the Day of Resurrection, Yawm al-Qiyamah. See, there were two resurrections. The second woe is past, the third woe cometh. All the books have mentioned two revelations, two resurrections, two trumpet blasts. So the first trumpet blast is the Bab. The second trumpet blast, in Adrianople. In 1863, with the immediate companions, and then in Adrianople, to the kings, to the people of Bayan, to all the world, I am the promised one. The new resurrection has come. And in Akka, 24 years, all the laws, the institutions, mighty outpouring, revelation. Tremendous. But this break from the notion that, look, he is himself under the shadow of the Ba, and also, we must, broke. This is called the Day of Resurrection. The concepts of the Bayan were preparatory. Everything mentioned in this is preparation. He says, read it 1,000 times, but it's not equal to reading one verse. To prepare. And the concept of martyr, which he mentions, is the Bahá'í concept of that. Because in other passages, he says, these martyrs of the Baha'i revelation, one drop of their blood can create khalqan la, no, humanity cannot measure. So you see, we must look at the perception. It's like in the Bible. If you're familiar with the Bible, it helps. Christ says, nobody came greater than John the Baptist. But it says, the least in the kingdom is greater than John the Baptist. What does it mean? It's fascinating. The Christians should think of it. You should think of it. We should think of it as Baha'is. Nobody came in Israel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Habakkuk, Amos, Zephaniah, Zechariah. The Christians know this back from 24. I have learnt it recently. You read it all, and then John the Baptist. Christ says, nobody came in except John the Baptist was great. But the least in the kingdom of heaven, Peter, the publican, Bartholomew, Philip, the sons of Zebedee, these are greater than John the Baptist. He's trying to say, look, whatever was in the past leads to John the Baptist, leads to me. Baha'u'llah is saying the same thing in the Ahmad. All the previous manifestations lead to the Bab. The Bab has revealed the Bayan. The Bayan has disclosed the mirrors and Shaheed, martyrs. The concept of, you understand what I mean? This is a little, he appointed, but please, these are not important things. I don't want you to become a Babi expert, because I'm worried about this. You must focus. But essentially, he mentioned the sun and the mirrors. And most of the mirrors, I submit, have been martyred in the 40th Salafs. And also there's a concept underneath the mirrors of Shaheed, or witnesses. And all this was pending the coming of the manifestation of Baha'u'llah. And Baha'u'llah is saying, all this that has come in the past, now, 100 of those, you cannot equal a perusal of one of this. It's exactly the same thing. And because it is so similar, Baha'u'llah kept mentioning it so many times. Right, the last book he wrote is called Epistle to the Son of the Wolf. He says, beware, beware, anybody should think that they're following the Bayan or the Bab or anything without recognizing me. He says that many times, the whole of the end of the Epistle to the Son of the Wolf. He says, remember John the Baptist. He said, I am not ready, I am not worthy to unloose his shoes. He says, this is John the Baptist. And he says, Hazrat Mubashir, the forerunner, the Bab, spoke about me as well. He said, I have revealed this book as a tuhfat, as a gift to you, as a hadiyat. This is because of my love. It's love. If you read it, you cry for love. So he loved him so much. He says, there is not a candle here. There are thousands of candles in all the mosques in Iran. In Isfahan, there are 300 mosques, and each mosque's got 1,000 candles. I haven't got a candle here. I am the one who revealed the Quran. I am the one who revealed all these books. I am the manifestation of God. In that love poem, which is the Bayan, he wrote to the Bab, and he said, this is my gift. And these concepts of mirrors and witnesses and shaheeds, martyrs, of that dispensation were part of this. So he gave them all as a gift. So the Bab says here, Baha'u'llah says here, 100 of those is not equal to realizing me. But of course, if someone has got the tablet of Ahmad, like Mona, and he's becoming a martyr, astaghfirullah, can we say that by just reading it we are equal to 100 of those? No. We can never even think of these terms. And that is why when they ask the Guardian, he says, this is not a question of chamiyat, quantitative numbers. This is a question of qualitative kayfiyat. You must realize the quality of this revelation in relation to the past. It's the promised one. In Promised Days Come, they ask the Guardian, what is the quality of this revelation? He says, it has got 4 qualities. Do you know this? You must remember this by heart, everybody, because it's very interesting. This is the Guardian. Promised Days Come. P-U-R-E. I try to remember it because Keith knows I always try to remember things. He says it's P-U-R-E. The promise of all revelations, the unifier of all revelations, the reconciler of all revelations. And the E, the essence of all revelations. P-U-R-E. Everybody, even. Yes, I'll ask Mrs. Safi Bash. Promise, unifier, reconciler, essence. So I hope it's been helpful, this particular.